welcome to our new episode of the Uganda Diaspora Show here on Civic Space TV. My name is Lynn Komugisha, and we will be delving into the new of I don't know what to call it, but now it has seen a new face. A few things changed here and there, but it is still the same. And there was hope that it could be changed. I'm talking about the Anti Homosexuality Act of 2023. Now, in a unanimous decision, a panel of 5 justices on Wednesday, led by Deputy Chief Justice Richard Butera, struck down 4 of the provisions of the Anti Homosexuality Act that were in contravention of the rights to health, privacy, and religion. Now, we have a lawyer in the house in the names of Jude. I beg your pardon. Let me not get that wrong. Jude. For most of you, you have seen Jude here on many spaces, and Jude Byamukama is an advocate in Uganda's courts of judicature and the managing partner in J. Byamukama and Company Advocates. The rest he might need to tell us maybe later, if he's maybe a farmer or if he's a politician. All those things we shall get to know. We have Okot, Ochen, Miriam, Kyomugasho, and others are going to join us along the way as we start this conversation. But I want us to start on the legal part of it. And maybe for those of you who may not understand, I'm trying to think that some of us may not understand where we stand regarding this decision by the court that upheld the acts, but also struck out a few of them. Now, Jude, if you could, briefly bring us to speed. What does all this mean, and how does it look like?
Oh, thank you, Lynn. Obviously, this was a very anticipated decision from the Constitutional Court, and the Constitutional Court didn't disappoint in terms of time, because there were 4 constitutional petitions that were filed by a host of people. There were actually, in all, there were 22 petitioners. That in itself is almost a record. There were 4 petitions filed last year to challenge the Anti Homosexuality Act. And the fact that we already have judgment from the Constitutional Court barely 3 months into the new year is also a record, because it's unusual for the Constitutional Court to deliver a decision with this amount of speed. I have over 4 or 5 cases before the Constitutional Court, which are, some are still pending judgment, and they are much older than this particular petition. And the nature of the petitioners, when I look at them, yes, there's a member of parliament, some civil society players, and then some individuals who might not have been who at least are well-known LGBT activists. And there are also some who are a bit rare. I will get into maybe some other aspects of that later. And among the other unique things, on the other side, we have the Attorney General. Usually a petition is challenging laws are only against the Attorney General. But for this particular one, two individuals and 1 organization applied to the court to be permitted to defend the law, because they were complaining that there was a likelihood that the government wanted the law to be nullified. And so one of them obviously has been is well known over this, also in the anti-homosexuality debates. Pastor Martin Semper is notorious, if I can use that phrase, over these issues. Engineer Stephen Langa, who is also, I think, the executive director of Family Life Network. So those 3, Pastor Martin Semper, Engineer Stephen Langa, and the Family Life Network Limited, they applied to the court to be allowed to join the Attorney General in defending the law. And their worry was the Attorney General could easily connive with the petitioners to put forward a weak case, so the petition so the Anti-Homosexuality Act is thrown out. Sometimes that has happened, by the way, in regard to particular laws, because the Attorney General can go before the court and say, well, I agree with the petitioners that this law has a problem. I remember must have been in 2000, around 2011, when a friend of mine, also a lawyer, Mr. Severino Twinobusinje, went to the Constitutional Court to challenge Parliament's resolutions regarding the oil and gas sector. The resolutions which were requiring the Honorable John Patrick Amama Mbabazi to step aside from the office of Prime Minister while they investigated his roles in the oil and gas sector. Severino Twinobusinje went to the Constitutional Court and challenged the resolutions of Parliament, and the Attorney General's response was that they agreed with the petition that Parliament had condemned the Prime Minister without hearing him. So they made the work easier for the Constitutional Court judges to nullify the resolutions of Parliament. So because of that background, there was some kind of fear that this law, which appears to be quite popular with across many sectors of the Ugandan society, that the government could probably carry water for the petitioners and allow them to have the law nullified and give them a quick win. But again, from a legal point of view, there was always this argument that if any citizen is free to go before the courts to challenge a law, then again, any citizen should also be free to go before the court and defend what Parliament has done. Because members of Parliament are people's representatives. And therefore, if people's representatives pass a law, and any citizen is free to go to the Constitutional Court to challenge the validity of that law, then any private citizen should also be free to go to the Constitutional Court and request to be permitted to defend the validity of such a law. And it was primarily on that consideration and others that the Constitutional Court permitted Pastor Martin Semper, Engineer Stephen Langa, and the Family Life Network to join the Attorney General in defending this law. When that happened, I know the petitioners were not entirely happy about it. And for me, looking at it from an objective point of view, number one, I think it was okay. I think it was a correct decision to permit private individuals to also try to defend this law. And from a tactical point of view, I knew that the petitioners were going to be in trouble since these respondents were permitted to be before the court. I saw it as the first sign that clearly this petition was not going to be the same as the previous Anti Homosexuality Act, which was nullified within 4 days of hearing the petition. And now maybe to give a bit of a background to the viewers. This was not the first time for an anti-homosexuality law to be passed by the Parliament of Uganda. The first time the law was passed, it was nullified by the Constitutional Court, but it was nullified purely for one reason, and it's important for the viewers to understand this. The first law was passed by Parliament without quorum. The quorum for Parliament means the number of members of Parliament who should be present in the House and voting is governed by the Constitution, and it must be at least two-thirds. At least two-thirds of members of Parliament should be present. The Parliament of Uganda has around 529, my math may not be entirely accurate, around 529 members of Parliament. So for Parliament to validly pass a law, you need two-thirds of the House. Two-thirds, that is over 300 members of Parliament. And I can tell you that the majority of laws passed by Parliament in the past 15 years rarely meet that threshold. Rarely meet that threshold. But people, usually most of the laws, nobody wants to challenge them. But also for you to be able to determine that Parliament didn't have quorum, many times you need cooperation of a member of Parliament who participated in the proceedings. So anyway, the first anti-homosexuality law was nullified on grounds that it had been passed by Parliament without quorum. And therefore, everything to do with whether it was a valid law in light of Uganda's constitution whether homosexuality could be a criminal, the practice of homosexuality could be a criminal offense, whether promoting homosexuality could be a criminal offense. All of those were never addressed by the Constitutional Court when it nullified the law over want of quorum. And therefore, having expunged the law purely because of lack of quorum, it was entirely open to Parliament to go back and make sure they pass the law with quorum. And that is what they did in this particular respect. That is what happened. The day the law was passed, it appears to me that more than 85% of the members of Parliament were in the House. They participated in it. And I think the reason was to make sure that the law is not defeated on the grounds of quorum. So in that regard, they crossed that hurdle. I was a bit surprised now getting into this judgment. I was a bit surprised that the petitioners, the numerous individuals and organizations, including some prominent law professors like my friend Dr. Businje Kabumba, Professor Sylvia Tamare, who are also quite vested in this area. I was surprised that they still wanted to, they raised an objection which was rejected by the court. Under the Ugandan constitution, under Article 90, I think 92 of the constitution, when the court has made a decision, Parliament cannot pass a law to overturn a decision of court or to undermine a decision of court under Article 92. So an argument was made by the petitioners in this case that since the Constitutional Court had nullified the first Anti Homosexuality Act, it was unconstitutional in light of Article 92 for Parliament to pass the law again. For obvious reasons, that argument was rejected.
Sorry to cut you short. I feel we're getting so legal, and we might lose some of the viewers who are not into the legal jargon and all those things. But
if you could when you invite a lawyer, there is always that trouble.
I know. But yes, and you have really given us a little bit of background and where we stand currently. But now, when they struck out the health, privacy, and religion, those of the provisions of in the Act, what does this mean in legal terms, but briefly?
Now, the decision of the Constitutional Court obviously upheld large parts of the law and nullified 4 provisions. So those 4 provisions, in other words, are no longer part of the Anti Homosexuality Act. The lay people say they are null and void, much as null and void mean the same thing. They have no legal effect. Those 4 provisions are to do with the mandatory reporting, for example, imposing responsibilities on owners of premises that have allegedly harbored people carrying out the practice of homosexuality. That provision was also nullified, and 2 others which were incidental to that. What that means is that those 4 clauses are no longer part of the law, and Parliament can never go back to enact them in any other form. So, in respect of those 4 clauses, that has been settled by the Constitutional Court. Obviously, we have to wait and see. I understand that the petitioners are planning to appeal to the Supreme Court. If they appeal and the Attorney General and these other pastor samples also cross appeal on those 4 clauses, then to remain that we shall have to wait again for the Supreme Court to decide whether the Constitutional Court lawfully removed those 4 clauses. It's still early. There is still time for parties to appeal and cross appeal. So we have to wait and see. But as it stands now, those 4 clauses don't exist. Nobody can be charged for not reporting someone, whether a doctor who has treated someone, whether a lawyer. I was always unhappy about that clause, and I actually thought I always believed it was unconstitutional, and I had made my voice clear. But owners of premises, again, the same thing. So we'll have to wait and see. I have listened to some of the petitioners, and for them, they think this is a trade-off. That because the World Bank also was not happy about, especially the clause to do with which would affect provision of health services to LGBT persons.
Absolutely. All right, Jude, thank you. I see we have been joined by Albert Bakasara. Albert, good to see you. Now, if we could proceed, the Deputy Speaker of Parliament, after the ruling, said that the Attorney General should critically examine the sections in the Act that have been nullified by the Constitutional Court and advise on a way forward. And we saw that there were many reactions from different corners of the world. The United States said it continues to be deeply concerned by reports of human rights abuses in Uganda, and so much as we shall delve into. I come to you, Okot, Ochen. When this act was, assented to by the president, we saw reactions from our donors, and we saw that there were sanctions by the USA, and it still is saying that they're not actually amused by this. They're saying the remaining provisions of the act pose grave threats to the Ugandan people. What do you say about this?
Thank you very much. Let me pass my regards to everyone out there. I think before even I go to comment on that, permit me to kind of backtrack by applauding our sisters and brothers from West Africa, Senegal, for the great work. I'm very delighted that Sonko, who was very influential, had to back Faye, and that's the importance of having a strong institutional network among supporters on the ground. So that was, I thought, would be important to pass, and maybe also should be a good reflection for our compatriots in Uganda. I've always emphasized about unity of the different entities in the country. Secondly, let me now comment on the big elephant in the house. I've had different national organizations and countries coming out very loud and clear about their discomfort with the law that has been passed by Uganda. And of course, I say that, especially the Western countries are not very impressed by the law that's been passed. But I know also that a number of countries, the non-alliant countries that are in support of Uganda, and especially the AU countries and even the Arab world, they're there. So it's kind of a cocktail, reactions out there. But from the Western world, I can see that they are very concerned and very determined to kind of suffocate some of the support that have been giving the Uganda government and their, their henchmen. I have seen also they've emphasized that they will also consider maybe to pass more sanctions on some of the politicians who are proactive in trying to enact this law in parliament. So I've seen USA have repeated and repeated that the one that part of the law repealed, even Canada is of the same view. Yeah, so I must say the NATO allies are of the same views that that provision of the law is very unfair. Some actually call it as a useless, and I saw from the Human Rights Watch, they say declare it as very appealing. They say that Uganda could not encourage lawmakers to indulge in such a backward and primitive way of making laws. So I can see that Uganda will have to do a lot of I would say international kind of engagement to kind of normalize the tension that is there. But I want to say that, I think also these Western countries are being selective in their kind of cry for promotion and protection of human rights in Uganda, because I know that the LBGD are not the only interest groups that have been kind of, targeted or even marginalized I know that in Uganda, actually, you can say you have even had maybe things like environmental, cultural, biological, almost genocide, in some parts of the country. But interestingly, the US and their allies have been kind of numb about it. But if it comes to this particular interest group, they are very kind of more concerned and more kind of more keen about it. That also leaves a lot of to be desired. And secondly, what do Ugandans want in general? Because I will say that every society has its norms and culture. Even where I live here, there are things that cannot be done. Like I know that back in Uganda, you folks there cherish and practice polygamous kind of relationships, while here is criminal. So how do we reconcile those kind of differences? Yeah, for now, thank you.
Thank you, Okot. Interesting there, because we have seen lots of international media say all sorts of things, and we're not going to delve into them. But coming to Miriam, we saw what happened last year after the act was passed. The World Bank cut funding. There was tension with the EU relations. Now, the petitioners in this act, in this court case, they were saying it contravenes Uganda's commitments under international human rights law, including the UN Convention Against Torture. Now, that is under the human rights category that they were talking about. But continue going forward, Miriam, the question I have for you is that we have stacked our guns, and we are not just the only ones. We have quite a number of African countries that we have seen stick to their guns. The other day, I was seeing that people were warning Ghana after it passed a law, and they're waiting the president's assent to it, and they're saying they're going to follow suit as Uganda. The World Bank might cut funding. In 2023, July, there were protests in Botswana over legislation seeking to make same-sex relations legal. Same month in Malawi, thousands took to the streets ahead of Constitutional Court case challenging the country's ban on same-sex relations. In Namibia, same story. We also saw that there was a lot happening. We have seen a rift coming between the Vatican and African churches. There's so much, especially the EU, those other the Western world and Africa. So all this looks to be another war, another silent war we are having as African countries against the West. With this new law, with this new stand, and us seeing other African countries stick to their guns, are we going to see more donors pull out? Are we going to see others come and stand with us? Where do you see this taking us?
I think to put it in perspective, Lynn, 31 out of 54 plus African countries all criminalized same-sex relationships. So it's not only Uganda, but 3 of those 31 countries are the ones which have capital punishment of death as one of the punishments if you commit any crime related to homosexuality. So I think that's aggravated homosexuality. But so you see, like, Uganda is one of the among the extremes. So it's the extremist among those African countries. And we have seen, yes, the donors have reacted by suspending some funding and giving warnings. But there are no sanctions so far. I haven't seen a lot of people being sanctioned for supporting the anti-homosexuality bills or whatever. The sanctions we have against the human rights abuses mostly are for torture-related crimes, mostly, except for the new ones, which are not yet. If there is any, maybe I hear people are denied from traveling and all that, but it's not really like so pronounced clearly that it was against the the LGBTIs, their stand on LGBTI issues. So for me, what stood out for me, actually, I would like to applaud the petitioners. I mean, it's not, they didn't achieve what they went out to do to get, but at least it's a positive step forward, since now at least the LGBTI people can access the health can access health services, cannot be reported anyhow, and people can breathe. I was surprised that I shared this ruling with a person close to me who is an LGBTI advocate, but she's living here in US. She's Ugandan. So she said, this is a positive achievement. I said, did you read what I shared? She said, yes. At least people have some privacy. You can go in a bathroom and you are not scared of being reported. You can sleep in your house and wake up in the morning not scared that your landlord is going to report you. And even your family can breathe because they are not mandated to report that one of them is homosexual, because the law as it was before, you could even be imprisoned if your sister is a homosexual LGBTI person and you are not reporting them to court. But it's still extreme, the punishments, and the biggest question is, do we really need anti-homosexuality bill in our books? Because all the sexual related crimes are covered in other laws which are already in the Constitution. You can't rape, you can't defile, you can't all the sexual crimes, sexual harassment, sexual assault. So why specifically target people of sexual minorities and make their existence almost illegal? If it's like they're saying, it's illegal to be a woman, it's illegal to be a man, it's illegal to be a woman or the other. Sexual orientation, it depends on how we really look at sexual orientation. If someone was born gay, what crime are they committing for being who they are? And basically, that's the challenge. For me, I really attribute it so much to our lack of information as to what the sexual minorities are. It's something that really needs to be imparted on us from way back, either maybe through education. We need to understand who are the sexual minorities and why are they the way they are. Of course, there were bad things going on, like in this advocacy, it's very common in civil societies where you see people say we condemn the marketing. That's how they put it. So like you are advocating something, but then you are almost imposing it on other people. And that's the problem with the Western world. The Western world wants to impose on us. If we are still trying to understand something, can you give us time to really get down and look deep into what this means for our society and our traditional values and our cultures? Even though it's a lie that African culture condemns homosexuality, that's the Judeo-Christian cultures. These are the cultures we inherited. Traditionally, African people never punished people of different sexual orientations. Okay, they shunned them. They talked bad about them because in Africa by that time, reproduction was very key. So they looked at these people, sexual minorities. If you are gay, you would you will not give birth to continue the lineage of your family. So they looked at them like people who are undermining their clan, their tribe, their families, because they won't be giving birth to the next generation. And they were condemned. Equally, like the same people we are shunning barren women. They were also shunning all sorts of things. So traditionally, African cultures had a lot of stuff, but they never I am yet to see a record where a gay person was punished for being gay in our culture. If it's there, then I would like to read that book which records such, or someone telling me that in their culture. Actually, in my culture, I'm a Minyankole, they used to kill pregnant girls who are unmarried. If you get pregnant and you are not married, but then I've never had anybody talking about killing a person who was gay. And they were there and they were known and they had names. They would call them Ebsiaga, they called them Ebifera, but they never killed anybody for being gay. And so which culture are we quoting here? Because I heard Jude will clarify for us. I heard that the court was upholding the laws against homosexuality because they are following the cultures, the African culture and tradition. So as these days everybody is talking of decolonizing our culture, it would be important for our land judges, our land communities, they call themselves, to inform themselves of what composes the African culture. Which culture should we upholding going forward? Because picking cultures from the West, okay, we want to pick Christianity from the West, but we don't want to pick LGBTI rights from the West. So where do we stand? And who are we as Africans? And what defines us?
Interestingly, Miriam, our constitution, if I could quote briefly, and this is not in any specific sections, but it is under a breakdown of this new ruling. And they're saying that the uniqueness of, and it was one of the grounds that the judges used, the uniqueness of Uganda's constitution obliges the courts of law to take into account the country's social cultural norms, values, and aspirations when resolving any disputes before them. It was one of the reasons one of the basis for the court decision. So,
Yeah.
well, I think they went back to our traditions, and like you said,
so what is our tradition? Yes.
Just a brief comment. Thank you very much, Miriam, for the extensive submissions on that regard. You know, we are between a hard place and a rock, in all these things here, because, as you were wondering what did African cultures ever entertain the issue of, gay or lesbianism kind of stuff. I want to tell you that in the African cultures, in most societies, even like in West Africa, like in Nigeria, even in my own part of the country, if you were, in the traditional African context, that part of the world, you'd be stoned to death, traditionally. Those were, you'd be stoned.
What is your culture? I would like to read about
No, it's a culture, but I can tell you they were actually there. Now, even I even know that even West Africa, if you go like to the Hausa land, the Oyu Empire, okay, you go there. Even in my society, those things like same thing, you be beaten seriously. If you are caught, engaging in that, you be beaten seriously.
Yes. Which culture is yours, actually?
I'm a Luo. I'm actually.
Okay.
Okot and Miriam. Let's not get deep into the cultural issues because those are quite very sensitive. But we can tell honestly that the African culture, by the concerted efforts of the different nations that are against it, that are against that are against homosexuality, and we are seeing them come together saying this is an African, so don't impose the Western culture onto the African. So I want to believe that there's that African culture that we need to appreciate, and because we are quite a number of Africans against the Homosexuality Act. I read the homosexuality itself. Yes. But let us speak to Albert before we can come back. Albert, we're glad to have you. Now, Albert, having heard from Jude, Okot, and Miriam, and we're seeing that we are getting the legal bit of it. We're also getting the global aspect of it. When Miriam says that, I mean, where is that sense of humanity? The other day, somebody was asking, do you then say you love your neighbor as you love yourself? What say you, Alfred?
Oh, good afternoon, good morning. You guys, I'm glad to join you, and I apologize for joining up a little late. As you can see, I'm sitting in the car because I really didn't want to miss this. I tried my best, but I had an errand to run this morning. So I will actually piggyback on that because that's how I intended to start this conversation. I think it all boils down to love. I have kids. And I know maybe all of you have kids. So we could talk about culture, we could talk about any of this. But really, is this really something that we want to instill in our children? And what if tomorrow you wake up and your teenage daughter or son says, I'm gay? I know all of us who have kids, we profess to love them, and maybe some of us love them at varying degrees. But I cannot imagine myself talking to my son or my daughter and say, oh, now because you've professed to be gay, I disown you, or I don't love you, or I don't think any of my relationship to that person would change. So when you start there as your starting point, out of love, whether religious or cultural, just out of humanity. When you start there, then the conversations that is coming out of Uganda would not be happening. I also want to add that here in America, they say there's no such a thing as bad publicity. This campaign has publicized the very thing that Uganda and Africans, as you say, Lynn, profess to hate, detest, or whatever word you want to use. They have been at the forefront of advertising homosexuality by pretending to oppose it. Because I think some of them, it's just pretense. Because I would want to know whether it's one of these people who I don't want to name names here, who are leading this campaign. I would like for them to sit on a show like this and tell us what they would do if their son or daughter told them that person was gay. You probably, some of them have not even thought of that. But you would see them singing a different tone. And we have seen them. We have seen them here in prominent American pastors. We even saw it with former U.S. Vice President Cheney. When the daughter came out gay, the tone changed. Because then it hits you. It's easy to talk about other people and their behaviors when they are not close to you. But we should not be that hypocritical in every situation in Uganda, where people support this law as long as they are now in government. And then tomorrow when the law is hitting them in the opposition, then that's when they come out and kind of show this false outrage. We should be consistent. Okay, we are Africans. Our culture is very loving. Our culture is very caring. And no, homosexuality is not a European or Western invention. It has always been in our culture. Every language, every culture in Africa has a word for it. Yeah, we may have shunned it. We may have kept it back there, but they were always there. It's not a problem. Among all the things, with the population exploding, with our politics screwed, with corruption, there's so much that we could be dealing with, and we're not. Lastly, I want to touch on the timing of the courts and the ruling that came out of Uganda this week. If I'm not mistaken, Uganda has or is in the process of sending a delegation to the IMF and World Bank ministerial meetings in Washington, D.C. For me, that's what saddened me. I know the courts are supposed to be independent, but there's no such thing as independence in Uganda. The executive, the presidency controls everything, whether it's parliament or judiciary. I would have liked to see the ruling coordinated with that delegation that was coming here to the World Bank ministerial meetings. Because if they have not left, I would advise them to just stay in Kampala. Why? Why waste taxpayers' money to come here? Because every office they're going to enter here, that's going to be the conversation. And I mean, we've talked about this, Lynn, several times on how our people have failed to understand how these countries work. If you want something from someone, this is just basic common sense. Even as kids, we had to learn it. How do you get something out of your parents? Babies learn it a few days after they're born. Hey, I cry, my mother comes running. We have to learn that in Uganda. We can't keep always putting these outrageous stories and torpedoing our ambitions. So if there's a delegation that is supposed to come here and renegotiate deals at the World Bank, beg for loans, which we do, why have this ruling come out this week of all weeks? So those are things we have to learn. How does this society work? Yes. Is it fair that America is picking on us and other Western countries are picking on us? We're a small country. We should be let to be independent. But says who? Says who? If we were the superpower, wouldn't we be dictating and throwing our weight around? Don't we? Uganda in its right is a superpower in that region. Don't we throw our weight around, whether it's in Congo, in Rwanda, in Southern Sudan? Everybody does that. We have to know our place and act within that confinement to advance the interests of our people. We can't always keep shooting ourselves in the foot. We really can't. Okay. Lastly, I think it's also hypocritical. And you've seen this from the people who are advocating for these kind of laws. They're older people. But if they're really putting these laws and they intend these laws to stay for a few years on the books of Uganda, then why in God's name, if they really think that these Western societies are so corrupt and they are really trying to damage us as Africans, then why are they sending their children to have this Western education? So they're kind of being hypocritical, because in 5, 15, 20 years from now, the people who are going to be advocating for this kind of rights for the minorities, homosexual rights, are going to be in their households because they've studied, they are now embrace the Western culture, and they're in the houses. These are going to be their kids and grandkids. So we have to make up our mind. In my humble opinion, this is a really huge dust up over nothing. Over nothing. But it has a cost to our borrowing power. It has a cost to our reputation as a country. It has a cost. Why we do the things we do? Maybe, Lynn, you have a better answer for me. I'll stop there. Thank you.
I wish I did have the answer, but thank you very much, Albert. Now, you bring up very interesting points. I think the children have already started. We know a few of them that have already started. They're supporting the Western culture, as it is called in Africa. But now, you also hinted on something that I want to ask Jude about, and that is something, the timing of this ruling. Now, Jude, the struck out sections of this ruling are sort of massaging the already bruised situation, sort of. And still the US, still the EU and other partners are saying it's not enough, you've got to do better than that. Is this a ploy for donor funding? Now, let me get you a little bit out of the legal space and bring you up here where most of us fall. Is this a ploy for donor funding?
My thinking is there is a real possibility that the decision of the Constitutional Court was intended to create a win-win for both sides. Have the petitioners and the left-wing section of the international community happy that, oh, the courts have nullified something in the law. And then again maintain parts of the law, because again the court knows this law is extremely popular with Ugandans. At the end of the day, from the messaging I have seen, the petitioners have been able to successfully mislead the international community that there is not a single provision which was nullified. I have seen how The Economist has covered it, CNN, and a number of really left-wing media platforms. I see many of them are not acknowledging that actually 4 clauses, which for me, I think, especially the clause regarding mandatory reporting, is a very big win for the petitioners. Because when you destroy mandatory reporting, the law loses a large part of its sting. Because it means no one is obliged to report. For who are in Canada and North America generally, Canada, United States, and the others, I'm sure you know you have laws which provide for mandatory reporting in cases regarding sexual abuse of minors, because it's a common thing.
Yeah, yes, true.
So mandatory reporting can be quite dangerous for in a law like this. So for me, striking it down was intended to be a win for the petitioners. But when I listened to them after the ruling, especially the likes of Dr. Adrian Juko, he was not a petitioner, but I know this organization I think he's the founder of this organization, which was Human Rights Awareness and Promotion Forum, petition number 16. There is a sense in which the court was trying to appease both sides, help the government of Uganda start mending its relations with the Western community, with the World Bank and IMF. Probably that explains a bit of the timing. I think contrary to what maybe Albert thinks, my thinking would be that the timing of the delivery of the ruling was intended to equip the people who are going for negotiations, so they can have a talking point and say, well, this law you are complaining about is being challenged in our courts, and the Constitutional Court has nullified part of it. You never know, the Supreme Court might throw all of it out. Because if I was a lobbyist for Uganda, that would be my talking point. If I went for these IMF meetings, I would tell them, no, don't worry. This law is under scrutiny of our courts, and our courts are independent. Already they have nullified 4 provisions. So let them do their work, and let's not use this as a bargaining chip for the support that we need as a country. And that speaks to my next point. There is a very big, the messaging around this law was a horrible failure on the part of the government of Uganda. First and foremost, I belong to the camp, obviously, that says we didn't need this law. I still think we didn't need this law per se. We could still achieve some of the concerns that exist. For sure, I know there is a lot of denial that there's nobody promoting homosexuality. I don't agree. There are people who promote homosexuality in this country, but we can contain them without a law. And that is what a number of African countries are doing. That's what many people do. I know for sure that the state of Florida has got a law which the Democrats don't like, which they call the don't say gay bill. But I know that the purpose of that law, which prohibits teachers from teaching about sexual orientation to young children, is precisely to prohibit promotion. And that's the bottom line. So maybe our members of parliament could have been a little more sophisticated and approached this whole issue in a different way. But when you outrightly go and enact a law and you call it the Anti Homosexuality Act, obviously, you are simply, you invite a lot of unnecessary opposition, which you cannot contain. That's how I look at it. And therefore, the courts of law are going to do their part. I'm very skeptical, by the way. I'm very skeptical that the Supreme Court is going to change the decision of the Constitutional Court. Because frankly speaking, they had these judges who had this panel, the panel which had this matter, they have done their best to try to pick out aspects which can be thrown out. And I think they have also given a good opportunity to the Director of Public Prosecutions to to not prosecute anyone under this law. That's what I expect is going to happen. Because those 4 clauses, they appear to be, the messaging from the petitioners is that they are really they are not a big deal. But for me, mandatory reporting, once you nullify it, it's a big deal. And it is very easy for the DPP to prohibit prosecutors from charging anybody under this law. I will give you an example. We had this law called the Public Order Management Act, which has been used to clamp down on activities of the opposition, not organize rallies, and even town hall meetings. And the Constitutional Court nullified only one section in it. The section which required that if you are to organize a meeting, you need a permit from police. But once that section was nullified, the law became literally useless. Nobody still cites it anymore. Even the police does not cite it anymore. And therefore, there is a sense in which I think the messaging from the people who are campaigners for LGBTI rights and whatever, I think part of their messaging personally is malicious because the courts, the judges have done some effort in trying to remove the sting from this law. But instead, the messaging is that we don't need to have this law in the books. And I'm very worried that if they continue that path, it's going to be difficult for them to win any hearts and minds on this side of the issue. But obviously, the timing of the delivery of this judgment, I can read into it that it was intended to aid the government. Whether it has achieved that, it seems not so, because it appears to have backfired spectacularly, and maybe they should have kept quiet and told the judges, please keep this thing, we shall just go and tell them. We shall tell our partners that don't worry, our Constitutional Court is about to deliver judgment in this matter, and it is independent, we don't know what it will decide.
Now,
Interesting.
I have to respond to that. I like that.
Yes, Albert.
I like that because he began by saying that maybe I'm wrong about the timing, and the timing was meant to placate and maybe empower the people coming, and then in the end he agreed with me. So they have completely missed the mark. I think the prudent thing to do would have been that last part. They should have just come here, continue to negotiate, let the thing stay back there. Okay, no one had been arrested in Uganda under this law, so it was dying down. It really was dying down, and I think there's also something that we're missing as Ugandans, as a country. I don't know. Maybe you guys. I didn't have the chance of doing my higher education in Uganda. Everything that I've done has been here. I don't know if at Makerere or any of these universities in Uganda, if there's actually a course on American studies. I really don't know. If you do, maybe Lynn, next time when we meet, you can have that as your homework. Let us know. Let us know if you can actually get a PhD in American studies from a Ugandan university. I would like to know that, because I can guarantee you here there are several universities that have a course on African studies. I even know a few people who have PhDs in African studies. That gives you an insight of how the politics of the country work. It doesn't matter what Uganda is. You have an audience you're playing to. You have to be able to take some time to learn your audience. If you don't, we're going to miss the mark, as the gentleman just agreed. And we have missed the mark on this one. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Albert. I know we do European history and all those things, so I'm not certain. If anyone knows that we do American, I don't think we do.
Instead, we have a course in Chinese studies, but not American.
But if you're targeting America, you have to have a course that teaches. It's a very good course. It will be very instrumental for our young diplomats to learn. So when they get here, they know how this system works. They can advocate articulately on Africa's positions. But if you just give, it doesn't matter whether you are right. If you just give, there was a comedy recently that I saw. The guy was talking about, the Muslims when they come yelling "Assalamu alaikum," and it's like everyone is like, you sound threatening even when you're saying peace be with you. So it's the same case for Uganda. You sound threatening even when you've taken out the most draconian parts of the law. You still sound threatening because you have these members of parliament, the speaker, the president. You are just thumping. We've put our foot on the neck of these gays, and we don't want homosexuals. It's hard for you to show the other polite side of saying, but the law is toothless. So
Right.
which one is it? And we don't believe you, because if you're saying you've won and we're going to be oppressed, and then you're saying, oh, but I won't arrest you. It doesn't work that way.
Right. Thank you, Albert. Miriam, you wanted to say something.
Yes, I wanted to say that Africa really, I had mentioned it earlier. What is really African? What is our culture? Like today, whatever we call African is purely Victorian, a European, Judeo-Christian culture which we borrowed when the colonizers brought to us. So if we are to even understand other people, Albert, can we first understand Africans?
Okay.
And you mentioned that Americans teach about Africa. Yes, I did African studies in USA. So, and all the basics. That's why I was challenging Ochen to tell me an African culture which kills the homosexuals. I haven't seen it. Actually, the Dogoni in Mali, which were the most civilized Africans, and they are related to the fellows who built the pyramids in Egypt and started the ancient African civilization, regarded people who were homosexuals as godly, because you are one person and you possess two sides of the sexual orientation. It's like you are embracing it all. And if we are ready to refer to God, do we even know which sex God is? What if
Right.
he's a
Very interesting
homosexual?
question. A very interesting question,
Right.
Miriam.
Yes, what is African culture? And let's start about that even before we go digging
I
into
actually thought, since you did African studies, I thought you would have something African culture in there.
Yes, I'm telling you, there is no ancient traditional African culture which killed homosexuals.
Right.
Just to comment briefly, Lynn, thank you
Yes,
for all your submissions. I think we are trying to question ourselves. Do Africans have a culture or identity? We do have, but the challenge is that our culture, our traditions have been eroded, from time to time, has been eroded and it's still being eroded. You can see right now, our generation, actually, a good section have been, they are in so much in the imperial Eurocentric, copy and paste kind of models of doing things. I'm saying that not because I'm anti, LBGD, because I have friends who are from that background. I have friends, I have colleagues. I don't mind what you do in your bedroom; it's your business. But what I'm very kind of concerned, we know that there are entities in Uganda who are using that kind of interest group to mint resources, to access funding. Even there is in record, some have been gone, to schools, actually, to kind of recruit children or infants into this kind of, discipline. I don't care what you do in your bedroom. If it's by what is by biology, it's okay. You do what you want to do, but don't go and influence the kids, the children. In the past, there are some NGOs, some individuals have been actually arrested by what I think the police in Uganda is there. And again, I hear many of them saying that is there in African culture that was against that kind of, conduct? Yes, they're there. In fact, most of them, even you can even see from if you go to AU, how many countries are anti this kind of law? They're there. That's a clear testimony that are uncomfortable. But me and you, who are in the Western world, we have to some degree been compromised already. I don't care if my child tomorrow, is a gay. It's okay. I don't mind. I have friends. I have colleagues. But what I'm kind of a little bit uncomfortable is that whereby we want just to take instructions from the West. That is wrong. African countries don't actually dictate what should be done here. There are a lot of kind of human rights issues here in Canada, in the US, very much. Have you ever seen Kenya, Uganda dictating about things here? No. How many First Nations are here who are suffering? They've been abused.
But we are not equal.
What do you mean? We're not equal. What do you mean? We're equal. We're human beings.
That's a reality. We're not.
That is you. That's your mindset. No.
No, it's a fact.
That is you. If you're not equal, say you're not equal with them. For me, I stand here. I'm better than many of them here. See, you're not equal.
I'm not talking about you as an individual.
No. You can't say you're not equal. What do you mean? They have their own identity. We have our own identity. Yes.
I know they have their identity.
Now we are just going to differ based on ideological and physical ground.
Okay.
It can't be different. Tell me how.
I'll let you finish and then
tell me how they're different, more advanced than us. Tell us.
No. What I mean, I don't want it to be defensive because this is not even a point of debate. Because clearly you cannot compare the US with Uganda. You cannot compare Canada with Kenya. We're not equal.
Defend in the context you're talking about.
Okay, I'm talking about the context of power. When was the last time the American taxpayer came? When was the last time the American president came to Entebbe to beg for healthcare money?
They don't come because why?
Because they have more money. Then we're not equal. If you're coming here,
they don't come why? Because they're extracting our gold or oil.
That is not even true.
They're doing that.
It's not true.
Our gold.
It is not true.
Right now, good
which gold? Where does Ugandan gold go?
Yes,
it's not true.
Albert and Okot.
No, I'm just saying we're not equal because if we're begging, we have a delegation coming to the World Bank to beg for loans.
Okay, gentlemen, can we listen to each other? Can we listen to each other? Okot, I need you to finish.
Okay.
Albert, just a moment.
Sure.
Okot, please finish.
I wanted to say something about. Okay, thank you, Albert and Ochen, for that. We all know that whoever pays the piper anyway calls the tune, and that's the fact. But back to what Jude had talked about we could have achieved most of the things that the anti-homosexuality bill was after legislating after without the homophobia. So I was quoted up by someone when they says the problem with this law is legalizing homophobia. It's not about you saying about the smaller details of whatever. To the ordinary person, they know that the Ugandan constitution forbids homosexuality or he has legalized against sexual minorities, and that's it. So digging deep inside, say ABCD, you are free to do this, that gets lost in the communication. And to the ordinary person, if they want to pursue someone, suppose you have a neighbor who is gay, you're gonna say, oh, you are not allowed to be here because you are gay. And before you even go back to use the law to defend you or the police to come and protect you, you could be lynched by the public because they don't even understand what is which as far as the law is concerned. So basically the biggest problem is homophobia, which is uncalled for. And Albert said, yeah, they sound threatening, and yes, it is threatening. And I think even the West is concerned about that. So either, that's why I said earlier that our biggest challenge is the lack of information. Be it the judges, we can talk about our education. These lawyers and the judges, they are also fed into the Western law or whatever was the 90s Western perspective, the 19th century Western perspective, Western thought, school of thought. And that is what we are fed in our schools. So we are lost on what defines us as African. What defines, what would an African scholar be required to be knowing basically, because you can't be an MP if you have no A-level qualification. That's the minimum. But what do we study in schools to ensure that by the time you attain that level of education, you are really informed about the basics of your society? I'm sure you see even today, women, we have challenges of passing the laws concerning the women, like the MAD bill and all that, because most of the parliamentarians, including women, have no knowledge about gender and women rights. If you can't even understand the basics, that whether I'm a girl or a boy, I deserve the same rights as anybody else, how can you even understand about the sexual minorities? So the biggest challenge is, and I think the West can listen to this, if you really want to advocate for the rights of sexual minorities, can we go back to the basics? So this back and forth of imposing sanctions, then the African leaders also fight back with throwing the laws in their faces. That doesn't work, and it won't help the minority groups. But if we go back and do research, if Okot says that the African culture is stoning, I would like to hear, for instance, the Kabaka of Buganda. Buganda is one of the oldest kingdoms in Uganda, and they have preserved their cultures for centuries. What do they say about LGBTI people in their community? Can they tell us how their society used to handle such as challenges? Can we learn from that? And then we can get that information and add with science, scientific research, and see to move forward. Why should we be a copy and paste society? Why should we be people, UN has decided ABCD, then we pick that, we put it in our laws, we don't even understand what it means, and then we think that's our tradition. For instance, today, okay, I read somewhere, but Jude, can you please clarify, what is the stand on UN human rights about the LGBTIs? Is there any specific law that or treaty that enforces their rights globally? Because that would help us to understand, for instance, the Muslim countries who use Sharia and all that sexually radical laws. How do they approach these challenges? And how are the advocates in their society for human rights? How are they moving to challenge those radicals? Because we can't say just because the Muslim countries, the Arabic side of the world, because they discriminate against women, or we should copy that and also discriminate against women. For instance, they are celebrating that their women can drive. So slowly they are progressively embracing the rights of women, but at their own pace. Can we also, the West should also give us that space to grow and understand what really can serve us going forward, because even cultures change. There is no culture which is static. So the African culture, the way it was in the 19th century, is not how it's going to be in 21st century. And what serves us today, we have global citizens in Africa, and we expect the African culture to also grow as science grows, as our knowledge base grows. Our culture should also be being updated equally. So for me, that's the approach we should be taking, but not the bulldozing, this side pushing the other side, the left and right.
Right. Before Jude can answer, let me quickly pick what the UN High Commissioner, for Human Rights said after the decision by the Constitutional Court. He said he actually asked the authorities to repeal it in its entirety, together with other discriminatory legislation. And he says he was actually calling on Uganda that it needs to uphold its international human rights treaty obligations. Jude, take it away.
No, just starting with that whole idea of treaty obligations. There is absolutely no human rights treaty to which Uganda is a signatory, which recognizes either same-sex marriage or LGBTI rights. None whatsoever.
It's the international rights.
There is none. Yeah, because you see, the treaties which are relevant would be the Universal Declaration on Human Rights, has nothing with LGBTI rights. The International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights are the same. What has been happening is that beginning in the last like 30 years ago, and maybe this is also, I think, important, because even in Western societies, this idea that LGBTI rights are settled and all, I know it's not correct. It's also a debate that goes on in those societies. Just this week, is it this week? I know Scotland passed a hate crime law which was really targeting people who criticize transgender individuals. And this famous author, J.K. Rowling, was all over it on social media and was daring the Scotland police to arrest her for insisting that she will not call someone she knows to be biological male. She's not going to call them woman when she knows they're actually man. And therefore, it's important that we also understand the context that in Western societies, still this is not a settled debate. So what has happened with the human rights treaties is that a number of organizations have been lobbying the United Nations to interpret the prohibition against discrimination on the grounds of sex to include sexual orientation. Okay, so there is this debate that since human rights forbid this discrimination on the grounds of sex should also logically include sexual orientation. This debate goes on. Many countries have made reservations on any proposal to include sexual orientation as a discrimination category. And by the way, the judgment of the Constitutional Court addresses that very point and points out that even in Uganda, when the 1995 Constitution was being enacted in 1995, there was a proposal to add the word sexual orientation in our Article 21 to say there will be no discrimination on the grounds of sex or sexual orientation. And it was rejected by the Constituent Assembly. And therefore, the judges, whose job is to interpret the Constitution, took the view that the idea that sexual orientation is a category in respect to discrimination was rejected then. And then they also pointed to the debates in the international community, particularly within the United Nations, on that very area. And they pointed out it's not settled. Instead, what you have are what we call general comments. So usually bureaucrats, staff of the United Nations, sometimes they are permitted to issue comments trying to interpret treaty obligations for countries. A number of them have tried to smuggle the phrase sexual orientation, and that is how they say countries are violating treaty obligations when they pass anti-homosexual related laws. However, the UN General Assembly has consistently failed to pass the interpretations which require that the word sex should include sexual orientation. And therefore, this is a debate that goes on and is not going to end very soon. That is, I think, an important aspect which needs to be understood, because there is an element in which I think we are assuming, there is an assumption that maybe the Ugandan judges are also some unexposed homophobic individuals who don't know what they are doing. I do know that one of the judges on that panel has actually participated in discussions at the United Nations on interpretation of treaties. I know one of the judges, I want to mention him. But it's important to note that this debate was captured, in my view, it is well captured in the judgment. The fact that there is no international consensus regarding the whole definition of sexual orientation and why it does not appear in any treaty, there is no international consensus. Every time this matter is put to vote, the majority of Africa and the Middle East and Eastern Europe, many of those countries have always made reservations and rejected the interpretation, which is favored by NATO members, United States and most of Western Europe. Even in Latin America, this is a debate that still remains. And that leads me to my second point. I know it has, all of you have kind of hinted on it. It's therefore a bit disingenuous of sections of the international community to try to manipulate lawmaking processes in these poor African countries like Uganda. Because there is this idea that because we are very poor, and I think that is what Albert was trying to explain to the chagrin of Okot. The idea is that geopolitics does not favor us. Just less than 2 years ago, China went and passed a national security law and imposed it on Hong Kong. prohibiting protests, prohibiting criticizing the Communist Party and all. And that's more draconian than this law. But guess what? United States is not even going to complain. I know they made pockets of noises that national security law is eroding rights, but they're not going to order what China does in Hong Kong. Because, I mean, they look at China almost as an equal player. But Uganda, obviously, with our GDP that is not even the size of Apple, we cannot, we are extremely vulnerable because we have no control over our own geopolitical position is disadvantaged. And therefore, we have to agree that even the pastor Sempers, when they say that this is neo-colonialism at work, when we are being forced to drop laws we are passing, they are making a point. We can accuse them of homophobia, but it is clearly true that this is neo-colonialism at work. The United States is trying to order us that we shouldn't pass laws which the Americans don't like. We shouldn't pass laws and I even doubt, by the way, that even the majority of Americans are in support of homosexuality. It's simply that the public opinion has been skewed. Because you may recall that in United States, same-sex marriages were prohibited in many states until 2015. Until I think around 2015, when the Supreme Court in that decision of Obajefer versus Hodges from the United States Supreme Court. And even that decision was 5-4. 5 judges voted in favor of nullifying laws which prohibit recognition of same-sex marriages. But 4 judges disagreed and thought those laws were valid. So Uganda is on a disadvantage in terms of geopolitics. That right now the Americans are run by Democrats who are extremely favorable and who are strongly controlled by the LGBTI lobbies internationally. But I doubt if they were Republicans that they would be responding this way. And that goes again into, I think, the point which has been made by Albert about the importance of us studying the American society and knowing when to do certain things. Because if I was a strategist for the government of Uganda, and I know that these people want this law at all costs, I would tell them, you people, let's first wait and see the political developments in our development partners and choose the best timing. So that is, I think, an area that we can always debate. But what is critical is the debate about homosexuality certainly is influenced by various corners. For many people, this is an annoying debate which they would want to go away. And maybe, again, to give some context, which I think we have not discussed. The passing of this law was initially triggered by a civil society organization went and lobbied a local government in Kasese to pass a bylaw which had the phrase sexual orientation. Now, when that bylaw was passed, it came to the attention of the members of parliament and they condemned it. And that is how this debate again started, because there was this whole accusation that a number of LGBTI lobby groups were trying to influence local governments to enact local bylaws that could provide fertile ground for promotion of these LGBTI activities and all. That is how it started. So maybe there is a sense in which we can say these groups shot themselves in the foot. We could simply have ignored it. I still think Parliament was a bit incited by these sorts of actions. There is a level in which it was populist, that is true. But maybe even the people who want to protect individuals with a homosexual orientation, they also need to sit down and revisit how they go about it. We should not blame one side of this divide. If I want to protect people, we have had this quarrel as well. I participated in a legal team challenging the HIV law, which also has a mandatory reporting requirement, and by that which was upheld by the Constitutional Court. That's why I'm very happy it was nullified here, because it means it will be easier for us to challenge it also in the other law. But you see, people who are supporting, who want to promote the LGBT activities or their rights or whatever, they also need to be to understand this cultural context. It's very important, and it's not going to go away, and nobody is going to really force it in the hearts and minds of people. It doesn't happen that way. I know many countries which appear to be neutral on this issue, but which do not entertain any so-called LGBTI advocacy. including some of our neighbors to Uganda. Just that for them, they are more strategic and organized in their foreign policy, and they understand that it's not clever to try to pass a law that will have you being accused of homophobia globally. And so this is something we have to keep thinking about. But obviously, we cannot pretend that the pressure that Uganda is facing is also a symptom of really this usual neo-colonialism of people, because they are stronger than us. They want to manipulate and control how Uganda runs its affairs. And the challenge with that is that the moment we are able to run our affairs without needing them, then we shall never listen to them, even when they are making a legitimate point. And therefore, they also need to understand that. And I guess that is what is happening in China, because they cannot now complain about the laws which China has passed in Hong Kong. They can't complain about the laws which China passes in mainland. We know China has, even in China, by the way, practice of religion is completely outlawed. It's almost illegal in many places, whether Christianity, whether Islam. It's very restricted. So at the end of the day, they may think they are going to convert the world through a coercive approach, but that coercive approach will eventually backfire, because it is based on their ability to use their funding to control how these poor countries run their affairs. But guess what? What if these poor countries are able to devise creative means of not needing that external donor money? What's going to happen?
Right. Thank you, Jude, for that elaborative explanation. Now, gentlemen and ladies, as we begin our 30 minutes to conclude the show, I want us to look at a little bit now, because you now are driving the show in an interesting direction. Is this really about homosexuality? Or there are different other issues that we might not be paying attention to, one being neocolonialism. But let me quickly look at in the chat room, depending on the this is Okot writing, and he says, depending on the ethnoculture and religious standing of a country, the Western world wants to dictate on the African countries. Right. So now the discussion is taking a different tone, rather, and it looks like, is this really about homosexuality, or is it neocolonialism, or is it a lack of democracy, or is it a bad note? You know, globally, we are looked at as a country that has failed on its human rights and on upholding its human rights. So, really, what is it all about? I'll ask Okot.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lynn.
Let's be brief so we give everybody time.
Sounds good. Thank you very much, and I want to thank the lawyer. I think Jude, made very extensive submissions. I think from my worldview and perspectives, we can look at this from both the local and the external angles. Locally, I think General Museveni has scored highly. This law is very popular among the locals. So in terms of campaign tool, yeah, it's going to win the minds and hearts of many Ugandans, as opposed to some section of the opposition, as you know, I won't mention. So I think here, the law has been passed for him in a very timely, period. He will gain from that. He will get some political mileage. Then secondly, I think also, as we already mentioned here, I think the international community, especially the West, they are being selective because, as I said before, Uganda has had a lot of human rights issues. This one is just, I would say, a footnote. We have had, like I said, like environmental, cultural, biological, even human, kind of destruction of human beings. But you find the same Western countries have declined to come out very vocal the way they're doing. So I think this is a double edge, is a double kind of sword, whereby in one angle, those who are empowered, who have the resources, want to untwist, those who have less, like Uganda. They want to impose their ways. But I don't mind, as we said before, I think maybe Uganda have not been very cunning and strategic. There was no need to coming out very kind of strong and love like this. Because in the past, in African societies, there were gays and lesbians, but they were not kind of pronounced so openly like this. Thank you.
Thank you, Coach Albert. What say you?
Thank you, Lynn. I think I'll try to respond to a couple of things from each of my fellow panelists. The first one, Miriam, you said the West should give us, and I would even not continue, I will just stop there. The West is not going to give us anything. And I think that's partly touching also on Okot's submission. We're not going to have a fair deal. We're only going to get what we advocate for, what we work hard for, what we strategize for as Africans. This mentality that somehow somebody should feel sorry for us and do the right thing by us is really bizarre. It's not even in our African culture. Okay, I don't remember African culture where neighbors hunted for and fed your family. This is a new phenomenon, and it's really putting us at a disadvantage. That's where I'm coming from. When I say we are different or we are unequal, I don't mean to yield me as a strong, independent, intelligent African man to say that somehow a white person or a Westerner is better than me. Absolutely not. Okay, so this is to Okot's point. I'm not. I know we're better than all of them, for the most part, and especially those that are among us, because we actually have had hardships that they didn't. So we've succeeded under odds that they never faced. So I could even say I'm better. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about our country strategizing and saying, do we need this law? And then you say, no, I don't need this law. I come from Toro. There's a proverb that says, meaning if somebody is holding a cane, and if you're holding a cane and somebody is very powerful than you, they will actually use the same cane you're holding to cane you. We have to recognize that. We're not going to be treated like China. We're not going to be treated like Saudi Arabia. We're going to be treated like Uganda. So let's act like it. And then Jude talked about the US laws and homosexual being allowed in 2015. So that's again our slightly misunderstanding of American laws and American politics and American studies, the lack of African American studies that we talked about earlier. As a matter of fact, the first state to legalize homosexuality or gay marriage was Massachusetts in, I believe it was 2004, under a Republican president, George W. Bush, and under a Republican governor, Romney, in Massachusetts. And since then, all states now, 50 states, gay marriage is legal. What passed in 2015 was a federal law. The Supreme Court decided a case that took it to a federal law, because I think it was the couple of ladies out of Maine that sued because one of them did not get the benefits when her partner died. And the courts decided that, no, they should have gotten their benefits because their federal benefits, because that was the partner. And then gay marriage now became legalized everywhere. But even before then, all 50 states recognized gay marriage. So this has been going on. The last part I want to end with, again, in our understanding of America and how it works. Let's look at where this conversation with gay marriage and homosexuality and all these minority rights started. This was long ago. But every year, they have increased. It's been incremental. And I can challenge the panelists here to tell me of any place that had gay rights, and within the last few years, those rights have been taken away. So they've actually been gaining ground. And they're gaining ground because of efforts like the ones that we see out of the Ugandan parliament and the country as a whole. Yes, this law is very popular in Uganda, but I can tell you, it's not going to be standing 10, 15, 20 years from now. Because again, I mentioned this earlier. The young people are don't care about this stuff. They have challenges. They don't care about this stuff. And for the most part, gay people are their friends. They might be living in Uganda, but they're on social media. Ask any of these people who are yelling and screaming how they've passed a good law. Ask them their kids. What are they watching on TV? What's their favorite show? You'll find out that 3 or 4 of those gay characters are gay. So in 15, 20, 30 years, this is not even going to be an issue. And that's why we're asking, what is our African culture? Yes, culture cannot be static. Even here in America, it's contentious. People are screaming on the right and saying, oh, that they're diluting American blood. Or we are diluting American blood. Culture can't be static. So we have to, and we no longer live in isolation. We can't carve out our corner and say, oh, we are Uganda, we are Rwanda, we are Ethiopia. No, we're a global community. We have to be able to protect minority rights. We've always done it. Somebody asked about why doesn't the king of Uganda talk? Why doesn't the king of Toro talk? In a way, they have talked. They have spoken. By keeping quiet, they have spoken. Because that was never an issue that caused the Baganda headache. So why should the king of Uganda talk about it now? That has never been an issue that caused the Batoro headache. Why should King Oyo come out now and talk about this? His father did not. His grandfather did not. Why should he? So they have spoken, except that we are more interested in screaming and yelling, and we're not listening. But they have spoken. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Albert. Miriam, to you, but there are certain issues that I would want you to ask. We know, rather to answer. We know that this law is in the public interest. That is one. Two, we also know that it is just not about homosexuality. We realize there's neocolonialism in the picture. But then we also realize that whereas the West, the World Bank, the US and the others are making noise, we are seeing that we have more actors in emerging economies. We don't mind if they don't give us their funding. We have alternative sources of financing: China, the Gulf states, Russia, and many others. So really, why is the West more loud than the rest of the other, the world?
I think the West is a bit more loud, like Albert was telling us. There has been developments, like even in the Western world. This is like a new phenomenon, and it's coming up, and people are realizing that we have some minority groups in our society who have been denied rights, and they deserve much more. So in the past, Lynn, don't be surprised. Living in America, I was talking recently to a guy, I think he's in 50s. He said his brother was gay, and because his friends were discriminating against him, and they were bullying him. He ran away from home. They've never seen him again. And he thinks he could have died, or he lived somewhere, because even his family was against him. And this is as recent as the 90s, the 80s. So it's been of recent that people have realized that there are people we are discriminating against in our society, and they deserve much more. There is nothing wrong that there is no crime you commit by being who you are. You were born gay. So what? Aren't you human? So what makes you less of a human being just because you were gay? Lynn, as women, I've been part of gender advocacy. As women, we realize that it's only been 100 years ago that every government in the world, almost every government, regarded women as half humans, as less humans. Actually, they believed like you had like a smaller brain, like you can't even vote, you can't be voted for, you can't lead, you can't even reason for yourself. And even in some parts of the world today, they still regard human as a disability. Like if you are a woman, you are not human enough. So the LGBTIs are also regarded the same. So it's not a mistake that today, with our scientific developments, with our knowledge, that we are waking up to realize, oh, these are human beings and they deserve much more. So why are we discriminating against them? But it's the real the thing that is really causing a discord is the way the information is being passed on. The West is imposing on other communities that are yet to understand how to really deal with this situation. So it's like a top up, yet it should be a bottom up. Let us first understand what we are dealing with here. So the homophobia, yes, it wasn't, we could have had some homophobia, but we even had discrimination against women. We even hated albinos. We even discriminated against people with the disabilities. And all these are the things that have been advocated for. Their rights have been advocated for as recent as the 20th century. And the LGBTs are coming in late, unfortunately. And this backlash is a normal process of growth. For me, actually, I see it as a heresy way, though it's kind of coming in an heresy way, but having a conversation about these issues is heresy for our society. That's how we access information. For instance, I was interested, President Museveni said, I'm asking my scientists to tell me how science interprets the sexual minorities scientifically. Do they exist? I'm yet to see the scientific report on that, because we all know they exist scientifically. Otherwise, why do we have hermaphrodites? Why do we have people with different chromosomes and others have less, and we have recessive genes and all that? So, but this is something we need to explore more, we need to understand before we start bullying people around. And I think that the reason that the politicians are catching up on this, it's not only M7 actually, all African dictators have a tendency to ride on the homophobia of the population. The homophobia is brought up by the Christian. It's like the other side of the Christian the Christian crusading. So the opposite of that is the homophobia. That's why you see the church leaders, the Martin Sembers, are the ones advocating for that. And Jude was talking about colonialism and anti-colonialism. If we are to condemn the anti-colonial, the neo-colonialism, it's this born-again thing that is really brainwashing us and trying to cover up. They criminalize our African traditions, African herbal medicine, African everything, and it's like we think that everything Western is godly. And we need to really break that down and unpack it. What is in there for us? What does it mean for Africa? Yes, we have homophobia, but is it hurting our society? Is it the urgent issue we should be dealing with today? And how are our scholars tackling this situation? Are we doing any research on how we can liberate these people who are discriminated in our society? But coming to Uganda, since we are running out of time, the biggest thing, look at the timing, how the corrupt scandals were sweeping in our media, but now it's like it's the homosexuality, and we are also falling victim to that. So, but I was really, really annoyed how the homophobia is weaponized, not only by Museveni, but you look at the speaker, she was called out for being so corrupt, and then she's like, oh, they are chasing me because of the anti-homosexuality thing. So the homophobia is weaponized by the dictators all over Africa. Don't be surprised that majority of African countries all and homosexual kind of have the homosexual laws in their books. It's like something that stone they used to throw at the West. When the West condemns the abuse of human rights, they throw back that, and they are using it to shield themselves from the criticism. In Uganda, we even have gross abuse of human rights. If you look into the parliament debate this week, the leader of opposition is calling upon for the release of the political prisoners that have been held for more than 4 years, and they're in prison, rotting. They've been tortured. Nobody knows their whereabouts. So those are the issues we should be talking about, which concern us. Like we know that, yeah, we have the LGBTI people in our society, but they are not hurt, they are not tortured, though they deserve much more than we are giving them. They don't deserve this homophobia we are using against them. But we have some more urgent issues to really be talking about, which our parliament should be discussing today, that concern us, like the corruption scandals, like the abuse of the human rights that are going on that are not answered. We have elections, they are coming, and nobody's talking about the real issues that are very urgent. What are our priorities?
Right. Thank you, Miriam. Indeed, what are our priorities? And that should go across the continent, really. What are our priorities? 1 minute we're trying to please the donors, the next minute we're fighting them, and the other minute we're in there under the armpits, trying to be part of them. So it's really interesting, and I thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Uganda has no need, Okot writes in the chat room, Uganda has no need to play second fiddle to other cultures. Ugandan youth don't support these laws. The youngsters might be embracing Western cultures, but not LGBTQI. This law is very popular among Ugandans. He goes on to say the East Asian Arab worlds have advanced economies. The Western world have great developments, but their views are not absolute. Okay. Thank you indeed. I want to take a minute of each one of you conclusively on this conversation. But for me, I know I'm not supposed to be on any side, and I'm not, but I don't think we needed this law, indeed, like Jude said earlier. It was not necessary in the first place. We could have moved and done whatever we needed to do without this law. Jude, in 1 minute, conclusively. Okay, Jude, are you there? We need you to conclude. Okay, we need your concluding remarks.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. I wanted to first react to one or two things from Albert, because I think he forgot our monotony in all this, and I'm quite well versed with American legal developments. Just to summarize, the offense of homosexuality actually existed in Texas until it was nullified in 2003 by the decision of Lawrence versus Texas in the United States Supreme Court. I know that in the American legal system, the individual states have even state constitutions, and the federal law only comes in for particular issues which all the states now must comply with. And the decision in Lawrence versus Texas, which was decided just 21 years ago, is what made it impossible for individual states to penalize practice of homosexuality. Just 21 years ago. But these people want Uganda to move at a pace which is way higher than they moved. It's not fair. Then point number two, I also know that in the year 2008, in California, which is one of the most liberal states, in California in 2008, the question of whether same-sex marriage should be recognized was a proposition on the ballot in that November general election, and the majority said no. They had voted for marriage to be recognized only between a man and a woman. And it is a federal judge who nullified the results of that proposition on other grounds that it was not something which should be decided by a referendum. But that should show you that we need to understand. Within Western society, I know there are several dissenting voices. Yes, they have been suppressed. The impression we get, because in Uganda here, we feed on the left-wing version of events mostly, whether from the television, from the internet, and it tends to paint a picture that there is consensus within the Western society about this area, but for sure there is no consensus on it as far as I know. And that's something we have to recognize and respect. But that having been said, what is very critical that we need to get is we didn't need this destruction. All of us can agree. We don't think it was necessary. I don't think it was necessary. The law may have aspects which I think can be defended without recourse to Christianity, without recourse to Islam. I think it has aspects of it that can be defended fairly. But the packaging and whether they were necessary, it's simply a problem we didn't need to create for ourselves. Like I think like the Rwandan president Paul Kagame told an audience in San Francisco when they asked him about homosexuality, and he told them that in Rwanda it's not a problem, and they will not create a problem where there is none. But let someone try, let an LGBT organization try going to Rwanda to promote, to identify itself, and they see whether they want to be clamped down with or without a law. So it's, I think that's something on which we can agree. It's about packaging. It was simply a PR disaster. We got the communication wrong. We got the strategy wrong, and we got our priorities wrong. To that extent, we can always agree. But maybe to inform Miriam, the question of the science, which actually President Museveni, I think, considered. There was a report made by a number of doctors, but the report was not made public because the doctors were worried about that they would be demonized by the international community, and therefore they refused to disclose their names. We have to agree that this issue of homosexuality, ideology has overtaken science. Ideology has overtaken science. We have to recognize that. And because of that, doctors were not comfortable disclosing their names. But I remember the report emphasized that homosexuality, there are cases of those who are born because of that, cause of gene disorders, but also that there is an element of nature. For example, in environments like prisons, and in other words, the idea that it can also be natural, that somebody who really wasn't homosexual can become homosexual. And by the way, this is also indicated in the judgment of the Constitutional Court. What is most amusing is that the judges of the Constitutional Court cite an article which was written by none other than Professor Sylvia Tamale, who is one of the loudest and oldest supporters of LGBT rights in Uganda. She wrote an article in one of the journals where she indeed also was confirming that not all homosexuality is inborn, that it can be caused from the environment, but in her view, sexual exploration is normal and should be permitted. And so we have to put these things in their context and not turn it into, it's a debate which will continue with or without Christianity. Otherwise, even in Islamic societies, it's going to be there. Even in societies which are, where both Islam and Christianity are minority religions, it's still a debate which is there. It's just unfortunate that in Uganda, we chose to make it a debate at a time when we have other important priorities that we should be focusing on. And therefore, that's the context in which I'll end my remarks.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jude. We don't have much time on us. Albert, quickly, concluding remarks.
Oh, quickly, I would like at some point you pull that tape and pick that comment from Jude where we got, I think he said we got the priorities wrong, we got the timing wrong, and something else. I think that should be the headliner for this show. But anyway, to conclude, I agree with everything. I mean, all of us here, we love Uganda. We want to see our country make good decisions. When they fall short, we come out and we advise and we try to, we're all basically trying to help. So I appreciate being on this panel. I appreciate these conversations. And this is how we kind of inform each other. This is how we learn. But I would implore, like I asked earlier, if there's no course, maybe it can even start on this show. If there's no course on American studies in Uganda, push it. Let's introduce it, because if we don't understand this system, Jude, and I do appreciate that you actually keep up on with American legal developments. It's very true, but I can tell you, this is not left-wing media that is permeated in Uganda. No, Trump was president for 4 years. He never made any laws that criminalized homosexuality, even though he pandered to the right every day. But he did not, because that's settled in the U.S. Minority rights are protected. It's going to be there. We could talk about whether they should teach in this school, whether this book should be on the shelf and all that. All that debate will continue. And so for the most part, just like I said, we should have American studies in Uganda. Yeah, for the most part, people think in Uganda, this is a pagan, satanic society. This is still a Christian country. You're laughing, Jude. But it's true. People, every time I visit Uganda, it's like, oh, you American, you are satanic, you're going to hell in a handbasket. And I'm thinking, really? Really? Huh? I hosted, this is quickly, I hosted an assistant bishop from Fort Portal last year. And I took him to a diocese in Baltimore where they were having a Catholic function. And he witnessed and participated, because they actually gave him a robe and all that kind of stuff, and he participated in a mass where they were ordaining over 125 priests. And when you came out, that's the first impression. He said, this is actually impressive. I didn't think this would be happening in America. I was like, what did you think? I was like, oh, well, with the news, we think you guys are devil worshipping. No, the man witnessed the ordaining of 125 priests over in one ceremony in one diocese. So this is still a Christian country. Yes, those debates will be there, but America has moved to a point where it can never go back. Gay rights will be recognized in this society. We can debate about other issues, but not that one.
All right. Thank you, Albert. Okot, quickly.
Thank you very much. I want to thank all my colleagues for sharing your perspectives. And I think this has been a very enlightening perspectives from all the fronts, though we have our own worldviews. And finally, I think, the timing for passing this law was not appropriate. But from the political front, I think General Museveni has benefited. Is going to attract, the support base, and is going to get some support there. So politically, is good. Maybe from the external factors and maybe international relations, he has failed. But in general, I must say that there is no need to applaud this kind of tendencies. I think, as you said, all that we could even do without, passing the law. Thank you.
And finally, Miriam.
In conclusion, Albert, I think as the same way you are calling us on Ugandans to do American studies and understand their society, I would like to call upon the Western world, the Americans, the Europeans and all that, to also sit down and study about Africa before they try to impose their cultures and behavior on us unconditionally. So that we understand each other, we know where we are coming from and how we are approaching issues. Some issues we are still growing into them, but we also have our traditions which we need to uphold. And the way we also approach the issues, it's not only the LGBT, there are a lot of contentious issues where the West clash with Africa, like the family-related laws and all that, child rights, so many stars, so much, and everybody thinks they are right where they stand. But what would be the harmonized view? What would be the consensus if we listen to each other? And that would be the most interesting part. And they can engage the researchers, they can engage our traditional leaders, our cultural elders. We have so many sources of information. And even our politicians should first do some deep searching and understand what really African culture is before jumping on populist ships and trying to play around with whatever they think is gonna propel their political careers to another level. I also want to say that the homophobia, let's not politicize the homophobia. Let's not fall prey to the political games of weaponizing homophobia for the politicians to gain some populist votes, when really our society is having some other urgent issues to deal with. And to ordinary Ugandan, I think I would like to borrow what Albert said. Start from the point of love. If it's your child, if it's your sister, if it's your brother that is gay, how would you treat them? How would you wish them to be treated by the rest? And from there, I think that's how you will understand what LGBTI or other minority groups in our society, what challenges they are facing and how you could help them moving forward.
Right. Thank you so much, Albert, Jude, Okot, and Miriam, for making time today to have this conversation. And I hope...
I would like to thank Jude for honoring our invitation.
Thank you, Jude. Thank you, Jude.
our conversation with
Thank you. It's been quite interesting. It's a tough ask. It's of course a tough ask on a Saturday afternoon.
I was about
But
to
I
ask.
felt it was quite important.
I'm glad you made
Jude, I was
it.
about to ask you. It's a Saturday, but you're all dressed. Did you have coat this morning?
No. It's my dress code when I have to do any sort of presentation.
Oh,
yeah.
nice.
I'll
Alright.
put back my sports jersey after this.
You need
I
to be colonized.
hope it's a national one.
You need to be colonized attire.
That's nice.
All right, guys.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
All right,
We'll
guys.
catch you again
Thank
next
you.
time.
Have a blessed weekend. Bye.
Oh, we have an eclipse on Monday, total eclipse of the sun, and it's a public holiday here. So if you want to
wow.
visit me, come and visit me and watch.
Enjoy.
Oh wow! Send photos, send videos to us.
Yeah.
I will.
All right.
I will.
Bye.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All
Bye.
right, all right.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Have a nice weekend.
Bye.